Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm back after a long delay. Apologies for the delay. Had a lot going on and actually had some podcast episodes that were ruined, but I'm back. So thank you for being here. Thanks for joining. And if you want to help support this show, please subscribe. It's a big help because that's the world we live in. We live in an algorithm dominated world of information dissemination through algorithmic micro niche tribal networks. So, so that's kind of what I'm going to be talking about today. Um, One of the things that I've always felt very passionately about is communicating a message and not necessarily communicating or disseminating information or ideas just to have them live in the realm of fantastic, thought-provoking, interesting ideas, but actually, how do we make them actionable? How do we get together and utilize the ideas to build new systems and structures that render the old ones obsolete? That's really a core focus of mine. And so during this time off, I had really been pondering, or as Jordan Peterson would say, I've been really wrestling around with the idea of, creating media that also critiques media. And it's like, well, how do you do that? Cain's got more followers than Abel, and Abel's jealous, and he splits his brother's head open with a rock on Mount Sinai, and Christ comes down, and now you're going to the gulag in heaven and hell. That's hell, man. It's bloody. It's hell. And it's like, well, what do you do with that? All right. If I decide to go on some tangential impressions, please, I invite you to hold space for those. Hopefully not too much, but if they happen, I could probably just do a whole show of impressions, and actually that might be more valuable than what I want to try and communicate because it's a very difficult thing to try and communicate a critique of the thing that I'm doing. Like I'm trying to critique information dissemination, communication, media in the age that we're living in today, and what it's doing to us, and how we're participating in it, and how the system at large co-ops and commodifies and commercializes everything to fit the needs and the agendas and the aims that benefit the growth and perpetuation and health of sustaining the system that I would like to get out of, that I would like to invent new appealing alternatives that are decentralized and localized and that don't rely on one way mass communication. I've never been about like trying to get the most amount of followers or the most amount of likes or anything like that because it's shallow, it's hollow. It just doesn't mean anything if there's no depth and substance there. If I wanted to, I could, and I could make a video like I communicated with aliens when I smoked DMT. I know the secrets of the universe, and then there's like a picture of me like someone screenshot that and write something ridiculous there. That's like every thumbnail. Every thumbnail is like, "Help! I'm trapped inside of a video. I'm in a simulation, and I escaped to be in another simulation." That's what I want to communicate. It's probably going to be a lot of episodes actually that I'm going to talk about this because it's so rich and deep, and there's so many thinkers that have touched on this subject, from Jean Baudrillard, the simulacra that inspired the Matrix. This idea of waking up and taking the red pill and awakening and ascending, and I mean it's like a Russian doll toy that just like keeps having layers and layers and layers to it. It's escaping Plato's cave, only to realize you're in another cave and another cave and another cave. So this is a huge area, absolutely huge, tremendously huge. In fact, I am aware of contact with aliens, and they're great aliens. The Anunnaki. They've been here before. They've built tremendous structures. They love gold. Not as great of the structures as Trump Tower. And we're gonna do a great deal. We're gonna get rid of those little creepy crawly insectoids. We're gonna get rid of those guys. We're gonna get rid of the little grays with their googly eyes, the scary little grays. We don't like them. They're creepy. And we're gonna make a great deal with the Anunnaki. We're gonna build new structures. They're gonna make pyramids with Trump and gold everywhere. I've talked to them. They're great. And got to get rid of those grays because they're coming here. They're raping people. They're killing people. They're abducting people. They're probing people, for crying out loud. And some of them are good people, but not all of them. They're great. Those little grays. We got to get rid of those little creepy grays. Zeta Reticula. I just got off the phone with some of the grays from Zeta Reticula, and I'm making a deal with the Anunnaki. All right. Okay. So yeah, the critique, like the critique of media while also making media for consumption. So I guess my ask is that you don't consume this. That this isn't that this is more of a journey that you get to go on with me. And I would like to do that too. I would like to invite people on the show and hear your stories and hear your opinions. Leave them in the comments. That's good too. But I would really also like to get people to share their experience of interacting with technology and media and news and information, and what it's like. And so that's an aim of the show. I think that is, when I think about it, I don't want interesting ideas to just live and exist in the realm of interesting ideas. I don't want to encourage the procrastination of absorbing and hoarding all the content that you can. I fall victim to that as well. Like, I'll watch YouTube videos that talk about how to be more organized and how to be more productive, and I'll just keep watching YouTube videos on how to be more organized and productive without actually being organized and productive. And I wonder if a lot of people can relate to this, and we all kind of can share some commonality here, where we find ourselves falling into a trap where we're just passively consuming content, and we're sort of skimming and reciting and repeating things and regurgitating stuff, and we're sort of stacking and hoarding things without actually taking action and applying things. It's like I'm watching videos on how to take action, but I'm not taking action, right? And it reminds me of this great quote I like, which is something to the effect of, we don't think ourselves into new ways of being. We act ourselves into new ways of thinking. That once we start taking action on something, we can start to think differently about things while we have the momentum of action. So if there's a core principle behind this show, it's to hope to spark, to be a catalyst for action taking and for grounding ideas into practical, applicable formats for us to execute on the interesting, fascinating concepts that are being discussed. All right. Well, with that being said, let's talk about one of the interesting, fascinating concepts to be discussed, right? Like, I'm creating this video. I'm going to be talking about something now. One route I can do is I can come on here and I can describe something and I can explain something, and I can share with you all of the information that I have and that I know about something. And you will hear it and you'll be like, oh, interesting. That's okay. That's pretty interesting. And then where does it go? Like, where does it actually go? Um, that is something that sort of is perplexing to me because we live in a time right now where there is no shortage of information and there are no real gatekeepers to the information. We could pretty much find almost anything out that we want to find out. We can search for it, artificial intelligence, right? I mean, it's only giving us what we already know. It's not necessarily coming up with new ideas and then putting those ideas into action, you know? So we have an abundance, maybe an overabundance of choices for entertainment, for knowledge, for information acquisition, for consumption of media. There's no shortage of that. There's no shortage of information. There's no shortage of people that have knowledge and skills. I feel that there is a shortage of wisdom and balance and appropriate, slow marinating and gestating and digesting of said information. Because what good is it if it's just like, whoa, cool? I mean, that's entertainment then, right? Like there's a lot of learning now that is entertainment. I remember when the media was criticized, I watched a documentary in college called Outfoxed about how Fox News Corporation has just become basically like an entertainment division of the news. As Frank Zappa said, politics is the entertainment division of the military industrial complex. Pretty much can be said for almost everything. Everything is the entertainment division of the thing that stands behind it. The thing that stands behind it is the incentive structure of the system that feeds it, that grows it, that perpetuates it, that stabilizes it and maintains it. When I talk about the system, I'm talking about the interconnected web of agreements that are held up by the people that occupy various different sectors within the system, the government, corporations, lobbyists, education, entertainment. Everybody is always checking like what is going to benefit them. And usually what benefits them is what adheres to the rules and regulations of the system, because the system is the one that dishes out the rewards to people that adhere and obey, right? Like in the essay, The System's Neatest Trick by Ted Kay, who wrote Industrial Society and Its Future, otherwise known as the Unabomber's Manifesto, is a great piece of writing and it's prophetic and it's very interesting. And he starts it off by describing like, look, the system is not designed to be basically like the system is what the system is not. And he explains what the system is not. And he talks about like basically like the system is always trying to preserve itself, this amorphous blob of like it's basically the Borg from Star Trek. All it wants to do is grow and assimilate. Anything that it can't assimilate, it tries to destroy. And the the way and like this is sort of like examining the water that we all swim in, right? It's the thing behind everything that keeps the sort of autopilot functionality going. Everything that we do, think, say, right? Like you see an interesting quote that someone posts on Instagram. It's Judeo-Krishnamurti. He says it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. You go, oh, great. I love that. What a great quote. Yeah, I feel that. That's true. And then you share that. And then you tell other people about it or you share it to your stories or whatever. And it's like, yeah, wow. All right, great. Oh, where does it go from there? What do we do with it from there? What does he mean? It's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. I mean, there's so much to get into with that. And what we do is we just kind of passively consume it. We're like sort of mildly amused by videos and entertainment and things like that. And all the while, everything that's allowed to continue and to propagate is only allowed to do it if it doesn't threaten dismantling the foundation and the fundamental structures of the incentive energies that grow and preserve the system. So anything that threatens to shake the mold of the system, like I'm a big fan of Timothy Leary's, tune in, turn on, drop out. Or is it turn on, tune in, and drop out? Well, that was dangerous for the system, and they had to figure out a way to either absorb it, assimilate it, commercialize it, commodify it, co-opt it, or destroy it and demonize it to preserve itself, right? So there's a lot here to get into and to explore, but really I just want to kind of pause for a second and just talk about how we feel. Like, how do we feel? How do you feel by, waking up every morning and going about your day, consuming content and all the while continuously living in an unchanging system, right? Even content that threatens the system, and we see, people that are in office right now, Trump and the gang, like, talking about the system and how it needs to change and all this stuff. Okay, we'll see, right? Like the my guess would be that the system is going to figure out how to use opposition and rebellion to its advantage. Like one of my theories is that there's a lot of talk about like the social credit score system and how that is a danger or a threat to Americans, and we don't want to be like China, and who is going, the system is not going to just abandon that, because that is the next logical step and progression to control a population and to have omnipotent dominance over a population. So the system is still functioning in that way. All the industries and all of the everything is geared towards like biometric data and surveillance and security and recording things, and they're massive industries. They're not going to just go away. They're not going to just disappear. So who can be a palatable salesman to the people to get the people to accept the conditions into which the system wants to go? Well, who better than someone who is rebelling, or who's like saying that they're rebelling against the swamp and the system, and then could potentially come out and say, look, we got to know who's coming in our country. We've got to have more information on people. This is for safety. This is for security. We're the immigration thing is huge, right? So I could see a oligarchic, technocratic control system being put into place, and people actually cheering for it and wanting it because they feel that it's going to be a way to control the illegal immigration population. And then boom, we find ourselves working for the system, executing its aims, adhering to its system of rewards for towing its lines and things like that. And so something that started off as like a true rebel movement winds up becoming something that is now being packaged and sold as a way to prove that you're a patriot. Prove that you're a patriot and sign up for the social credit system. And it won't be as blatant and obvious as that, but it'll be something like that, right? And so the system is always just looking to see, okay, well, what's going on? And again, I'm personifying it, but it's the natural occurrence of spontaneous, voluntary cooperation in unspoken ways where people realize, like, this benefits me to do this. And if it benefits you to do it and you're rewarded by the system, it's really hard to say no, particularly when a lot of people have sold their souls to the devil and have no moral, ethical integrity and are willing to do whatever they got to do in order to be rewarded by the dominant game that we all have to play. But a message that totally rejects the system and wants to dismantle its incentive systems and fundamental structures, that's a threat, right? Um, so that's that's really what I want to explore a little bit more. And let me see if I can maybe just pull something up here um, to read and give a little extra context to what I'm talking about. So this is just in the beginning of the essay, The System's Neatest Trick. The system needs a population that is meek, nonviolent, domesticated, docile, and obedient. It needs to avoid any conflict or disruption that could interfere with the orderly functioning of the social machine. In addition to suppressing racial, ethnic, religious, and other group hostilities, it also has to suppress or harness for its own advantage all other tendencies that could lead to disruption or disorder, such as machismo, aggressive impulses, and any inclination to violence. Naturally, traditional racial and ethnic antagonisms die slowly. Machismo, aggressiveness, and violent impulses are not easily suppressed, and attitudes towards sex and gender identity are not transformed overnight. Therefore, there are many individuals who resist these changes, and the system is faced with the problem of overcoming their resistance. Well, how do you overcome resistance to the system? Because the system is thinking, and the system isn't thinking, but the system always wants to preserve itself. So here he says how the system exploits the impulse to rebel. All of us in modern society are hemmed. All of us in modern society are hemmed in by a dense network of rules and regulations. We are at the mercy of large organizations such as corporations, governments, labor unions, universities, churches, and political parties, and consequently, we are powerless. As a result of the servitude, the powerlessness, and the indignities that the system inflicts on us, there is widespread frustration, which leads to an impulse to rebel. And this is where the system plays its neatest trick. Through a brilliant sleight of hand, it turns rebellion to its own advantage. Many people do not understand the roots of their own frustration, hence, their rebellion is directionless. They know that they want to rebel, but they don't know what they want to rebel against. Luckily, the system is able to fill their need by providing them with a list of standard and stereotyped grievances in the name of which to rebel: racism, homophobia, women's issues, poverty, sweatshops, immigration, right? The billionaire elite class, like whatever it is, there's a whole laundry bag of activist issues. Huge numbers of would-be rebels take the bait in fighting racism, sexism, etc. They are only doing the system's work for it. In spite of this, they imagine that they are rebelling against the system. How is this possible? First, 50 years ago, the system was not yet committed to equality for black people, women, and homosexuals. So that action in favor of these causes really was a form of rebellion. Consequently, these causes came to be conveniently regarded as rebel causes. They have retained that status today simply as a matter of tradition. That is because each rebel generation imitates the preceding generations. Second, there are still significant numbers of people, as I pointed out earlier, who resist the social changes that the system requires, and some of these people even are authority figures such as cops, judges, and politicians. These resistors provide a target for the would-be rebels, someone for them to rebel against. Commentators like Rush Limbaugh help the process by ranting against the activists, and the activists, seeing that they have made someone angry, fosters the illusion that they are rebelling. Third, In order to bring themselves into conflict, even with the majority of the system's leaders who fully accept the social changes that the system demands, the would be rebels insist on solutions that go farther than what the system's leaders consider prudent, and they show exaggerated anger over trivial matters. For example, they demand payment of reparations to black people, and they often become enraged at any criticism of minority groups, no matter how cautious and reasonable. In this way, the activists are able to maintain the illusion that they are rebelling against the system, but the illusion is absurd. Agitation against racism, sexism, homophobia, and the like no more constitutes rebellion against the system than does agitation against political graft and corruption. Those who work against the graft and corruption are not rebelling, but acting as the system's enforcers. They are helping to keep the politicians obedient to the rules of the system. Those who work against racism, sexism, and homophobia similarly are acting as the system's enforcers. They help the system to suppress the deviant, racist, sexist, and homophobic attitudes that cause problems for the system. But the activists don't act only as the system's enforcers. They also serve as a kind of lightning rod that protects the system by drawing public resentment away from the system and its institutions and onto them. For example, there were several reasons why it was to the system's advantage to get women out of the home and into the workplace. 50 years ago, if the system, as represented by the government or the media, had begun out of the blue a propaganda campaign designed to make it socially acceptable for women to center their lives on careers rather than on the home, the natural human resistance to change would have caused widespread public resentment. What actually happened was that the changes were spearheaded by radical feminists behind whom the system's institutions trailed at a safe distance. The resentment of the more conservative members of society was directed primarily against the radical feminists rather than the system and the institutions, because the changes sponsored by the system seemed slow and moderate in comparison with the more radical solutions advocated by feminists. And even these relatively slow changes were seen as having been forced on the system by pressure from the radicals. So, in a nutshell, the system's neatest trick is, for the sake of its own efficiency and security, the system needs to bring about deep and radical social changes to match the changed conditions resulting from technological progress. The frustration of life under the circumstances imposed by the system leads to rebellious impulses. Rebellious impulses are co-opted by the system in the service of social changes. It requires activists, rebels to go against the old and outdated values that are no longer of use to the system and favor the new values the system needs us to adopt. In this way, rebellious impulses, which otherwise might have been dangerous to the system, are given an outlet that is not only harmless to the system, but useful to it. Much of the public resentment resulting from the imposition of social changes is drawn away from the system and the institutions and is directed instead at the radicals who spearheaded the social change. Of course, this trick was not planned in advance by the system's leaders, who are not conscious of having played a trick at all. The way it works is something like this. In deciding what position to take on any issue, the editors, publishers, and owners of the media must consciously or unconsciously balance several factors. They must consider how the reader or the viewer will react to what they print or broadcast about the issue. They must consider how their advertisers, their peers in the media, and other powerful persons will react. And they must consider the effect on the security of the system of what they print or broadcast. These practical considerations will usually outweigh whatever personal feelings they may have about an issue. The personal feelings of the media leaders, their advertisers, and other powerful persons are varied. They may be liberal or conservative, religious or atheistic. The only universal common ground among the leaders is their commitment to the system, its security, and its power. And by that, he means they know that if they go with what the system wants, they will be rewarded for it. Therefore, within the limits imposed by what the public is willing to accept, the principal factor determining the attitudes propagated by the media is a rough consensus of opinion among the media leaders and other powerful people as to what is good for the system. Thus, when an editor or other media leader sets out to decide what attitude to take towards a movement or cause, his first thought is whether the movement includes anything that is good or bad for the system. Maybe he tells himself that his decision is based on moral, philosophical, or religious grounds, but it's also an observable fact that in practice, the security of the system takes precedence over all other factors in determining the attitude of the media. So, the main thing to keep in mind here is that if there's information that threatens the foundations and the structure of the system, if the system feels threatened or dismantled, or by threat of being dismantled, it will try and co-opt that revolutionary frustration, that anger, that spirit of being, suffering these indignities that we find intolerable and wanting to change them. It will try and find a way to co-opt that and use it to its own aims and agendas and package it up in such a way where we all feel like there's something good happening. And if not, it will try and take it out and it'll try and eliminate it. Because at the end of the day, somebody who's an editor for the New York Times doesn't want to publish something that is going to put them out of a job, even if it is like, right? So we find ourselves in this sort of trap in a way. Like here I am on YouTube. I'm trying to be conscious actually of the fact that I don't know, like what can I talk about? What can I say? Like, are they going to listen and strike me for things? Like I've already had stuff taken down, and so it's almost like, okay, well, if you're wanting to reach people, then you have to play the game, and you have to play the game in a particular way that we deem to be appropriate and acceptable. And if you don't want to play the game in that way, well, then you're going to be, we're going to figure out something to do with you. So the reason why I shared that, and I'm talking about this, is because I wonder sometimes, like a lot of the ideas that I like discussing, I like talking about, are based upon how we create reality and how we collaborate with each other and come up with new and interesting things uh, like looking at like history and looking at where we are to try and make real changes. But we can't make those real changes if we are relegated to operating within a certain band of frequency. Like there's borders and there's boundaries. There's the 3x5 card of allowable thought, opinion, and expression that we have to play within. And like I said, many people accept the rules of that game and can be operating in terms of being seen as change makers and activists and rebels. But really, what's changed? I mean, really, like, what has changed? What has actually changed? Nothing has really changed in terms of the kind of system that we've lived under. It's just grown bigger, and it's gotten more sophisticated by all of us participating within it, right? So there's like something that I'm thinking about here, which is along the lines of like, well, okay, Mike, like if this is if this is happening, then what good is it to talk about it? What good is it to talk about it? What good is it to talk about anything? Why don't we just exist in a world where we just kind of find things to be mildly amusing and have fun and, maybe learn a little bit and whatever, but if we're not actually making real root cause, like if we're only addressing the symptoms, if we're not actually getting the root causes, then we're not really making any changes. And all of the changes that we see that are made are illusionary. They're like little crumbs that they throw to the people to appease us, to make us feel like we're making change, but like make us feel like we're making progress. But I don't think that we really do feel that way. I certainly don't feel that way. So, yeah, just a little tidbit here of what I'm going to be talking about, what I'm going to be doing. I'm in a new home and I've got a new studio and I'm working on some things. I've got some conversations lined up with some people and I want to come back to this. I want to talk more on this topic. I've got a lot more to say about it. And yeah, I hope that sort of provoked some thought. I want to hear from you in the comments. I would love to get some people on the show to share how they feel about what we're discussing here, and yeah, I'll put out some more videos uh, coming out soon within the next couple weeks. Some will be conversations, and then some will be getting back to this. Some other topics that I'm interested in that I'll be making videos about are going to be about therapy, about psychedelics, and how basically not all of what we see that is happening, which we deem to be progress, is progress because our definition of progress is skewed because we're all operating under the subjugation of the incentives of the system. Thank you. Please subscribe. Until next time, peace.